So let's make a start by just giving ourselves a chance to remind ourselves of the basic postures. And if you haven't done this before, then this is a good starting point for various reasons. Feet should be hip width apart, and you have some sort of leeway there, but that's to offer the support to your hips and thereby to your shoulders. Can you imagine parallel lines going down through either side of your body? Perhaps a third line going down through the middle of your body, the center line. You can have your feet slightly turned out if that's more comfortable, but try and avoid them turning out too far. On the side, I'm going to bring my weight forwards. I'm going to exaggerate this so you can see I'm angling forwards here. It wouldn't be that much, not normally. I want to avoid this, putting my shoulders back tight in my back. So what I'm going to do is to just allow my hips to drop back, and you see the pelvis just levels off, and I come to a more upright position, keeping that weight forwards. Doing the support for your body from your legs and your feet. Doing the support for your upper body from your back, so your back should feel longer, broader than the front of your body. And that requires an adjustment, because rather than this, trying to hold ourselves up, we allow the front of the body to drop, and we feel almost like the front of the body is hanging from our back. And also be aware of the skeleton and the surrounding area. Just have this sense of really your whole body flowing inwards and downwards through that area into the ground. Now, bring your attention to the middle part of your body, between hips and waist, and just start to turn there. Arms are hanging from your shoulders, feeling quite heavy. And as you turn, feel your arms being pulled around. We often use an image of moving through water. So as though there's a little bit of resistance to the movement. Just enough to make it an intended movement. These are intentional movements. Not so much that you feel as though you have to sort of tighten up and struggle and strain against that resistance. The water is a useful image. And just notice how the movements in your body affect your posture. Trying not to let them throw you out. And the key to this is to just get this feeling of releasing, of letting go in lower back, hips, buttocks. So they're overhanging slightly, almost like you're sitting on a fence. We literally sit into the ground. And if you can do that, then you're less likely to pull your hips around. And hips in the center of the body are crucial here. The pelvis can be thought of as being level with the ground, parallel to the ground. And as your center of gravity sinks, and as you begin to warm up a little bit, you should find that there's a little bit more space, and we just want to allow the movement to fill that space. We're not pushing hard here. And that's important. Give your body time to warm up, to loosen up. And like water flowing into a puddle, movement just fills the space and will gradually dissolve it away, increase the space. Nice steady rhythm. Hands flopping around your body. So always a good exercise to start with. It has a very gentle aerobic quality. you can expect your heart to start beating a little bit faster, your body to warm up. One of the great things about this exercise. Another is that it gives us this chance to review posture, to feel the effect of the change in posture on our movements. And finally, it's a good way of bringing your attention into your body. And this is one of the really important aspects of Tai Chi, that we want to keep a sense of being centered in our body, both to help the movements, but also because that's a good thing for the mind. The calmness of the movement develops out of that. And what we find, of course, is that that attention wanders away, but we learn to gradually bring it back. Turn your hands palm out, raise them up a little bit. No higher than shoulder height. Try to find a position for your arms where they feel comfortable, where the big muscles of your arms, the radial muscle, biceps, triceps, aren't actually straining, so that more of your arm gets involved in maintaining the structure of your arm, the shape. And in general, this is something that we want to try and do through the whole of our body. So we spread the load, we spread the effort of movement, carrying the weight of our body, and so on and so forth. And then let your hands drop down. Take a few moments to think about this basic posture before we start the main body of exercises. And a good exercise, and again I'm going to exaggerate. I'm going to come a bit closer actually so you can see more easily. So I'm doing the movements too big, basically, but what I want you to do is just rock your weight forwards and backwards, towards the front of your feet, towards the back of your feet, and just using this pole as an image of that center line that I talked about a few moments ago, that middle line running through the body. If you could see it, two things to think about. One is this. You'll notice that as I do this, the line, the relationship between that line and my body stays more or less the same. So I'm not doing something like this or this, but it's my whole body just tilting forward. So the pivot point is my ankles. Another way of thinking of the center line is that I rock forward, and it doesn't stay with me, but it stays there. And this is quite useful because the other one's quite useful. But as I go forwards to here, if I go too far, then that's when I start to stumble forwards or tighten up. So an idea of where that center line is helps us to avoid that. Think of that center line in that context as being like the mooring post of a boat on the sea. So the boat will drift away, but will get pulled back. And a similar kind of dynamic as the one I mentioned with our attention, drifting out, thinking about something else, and then realizing that we want to bring our attention back. This is just a natural rhythm for both body and mind, I feel. Go too far forwards, as I've just pointed out, and you'll have to take a step or you'll start to stiffen up. Go too far back, the same thing. So in practice, the range of movement in your foot is through the arch of your foot, going forwards to the ball of each foot, and going back to the front part of the heel in each foot. And one of the things that we're looking for here is a sense of what we might call balance, or equilibrium is probably a better way of thinking about it. In theory, I can't do it, but in theory, I could find a position for this pole where it was so perfectly in line with the pull of gravity that I wouldn't need to hold on to it. If it's tilted right over, I need to support it more strongly. But the closer to the middle, the lighter my touch can become. So there's a possibly theoretical central point, and just notice again the changes in your body. And if you can just identify where that point is, and like a ball coming to rest on a lawn, if you roll the ball along the lawn, you just gradually sort of settle down and come to rest. So one of the things that we're aiming for is for that point actually to be just behind the border of the foot. So again, more forwards in your feet, and once again, that slight tendency to feel that you're dropping forwards is neutralized by the feeling of dropping back. So this is the how can I put it? This is the quality of the body, mind, and energy really that we're looking to sustain through the various exercises, which of course is quite a tricky process. So from this position, being careful of your knees, don't sort of think that you've got to bend your knees a great deal. Keep them soft. Let your hips drop back a little bit more. And when you feel the push coming back up from your legs, just coming up, and then once again sinking down. So again, we have this two-part movement away from the ground, and at a certain point, before it becomes a strain, back in towards the ground, trying to get your center of gravity to drop, to root down. First key principle in Tai Chi. Bring your hands around as though you're cradling a ball. And then this time that movement upwards through your hips, through your back, creates a wave that pushes your hands up. And then it's like you've got a ball underneath your hands now and you're pushing the ball down into water. Notice how my elbows get pushed out by the expansion. And out. So this is the exercise, rooting down. And again, trying to let that set into a nice steady rhythm that begins hopefully to resonate through the whole of your body. Rooting down is really the first key physical principle that we look for. And as always, it's accompanied by our attention. So as though our attention goes down into our feet, and just as it settles there for a moment, and it will only be a moment, there's a glimpse, hopefully, of that quieter, stiller quality. And this time, turn your hands palm out, push up, and press down. So this is the movement of Wild Goose. Maybe making use of this image of the bird in flight, if it's a useful image to you. Different images convey all sorts of qualities to us, but they're only going to work if it's a meaningful image for us. If I use an image that isn't useful to you, then you might want to store it away in your mind somewhere. It might become useful to you at some point, but you don't necessarily have to make use of it right now. And then let your hands cross onto your belly, pushing up. It's this part in the cloud. Elbows push down, drawing your fingers around in a smooth circle. At the end of the expanding movement, you should feel that you could have moved a little bit further. So you maintain that sense of space within your body for the internal movement. Do one more of these, and then we're going to go back to the first of them, and just put them into a little sequence, just a few rounds, starting with rooting down. Just let your elbows bend so your hands curl under, doing one of each. If you get lost, if you can't remember which one you've just done, which is quite easy to do, don't worry, it's not the end of the world. But if you can, just trying to maintain a very gentle focus of attention on your body through an awareness of the movements. These are moving meditations. People more experienced with this, maybe you can just be aware of the subtle differences that we experience in the upper part of our body, mostly between these three different movements. The legs are consistent, pushing up and sinking down. But feel the pattern of expansion, contraction in your back, your sides, the front of your body, shoulders, and how they can, as I say, just change slightly from one movement to another, from one stage of one movement to another. Do one more round. And then standing again for a moment and reflect on your posture. Take a couple of slow, gentle breaths. So carrying on in this posture, let the hips sink down and then pushing up again. This time feeling the expansion and contraction more on one side than another. And again, starting with your elbow, gets pushed out, drawing your fingers up. At the top of the movement, just above your head, wind your arm around and draw down again. This is dragon plucks the stars from the sky. And once again, you should feel as though you could have moved a little bit further. It's almost like as you push your arm up, you're trying to stretch out a big elastic band from your foot to your fingers, and then you want it to contract nice and gently. Again, that nice steady rhythm. One more on each side. Next one. Hands to your sides. Once again, your hands coming up, this time just a little above your head, still in front of your body there. And then down. And then lift again, but this time drop your elbows so you push out to the sides and back. From the side, remembering that longer, broader back. Your hands should be here, not here. And then again and pushing out. See where my hand is here, not here, but here. And that helps to maintain that sense of our back being longer and stronger, but not straining in your back. So just see if you can be aware again of the different sort of patterns of movement in your body, particularly I think with this one, your back. And then this time, once again, bringing your attention to the center of your body, and turning as you push your hands out. Remember that feeling in your back. Don't turn so far that you lose that. Don't twist your shoulders around. Turn the other way. And back. And then facing forwards and pushing out. So pushing in 4 directions. And the directions are really determined by the center of your body. Here, you're pushing up, facing straight forwards. With the middle 2 movements, the hands are pushing out to your sides, but because your body's turning, they travel on a diagonal line out and then back. Same thing going to the other side. And back. And then facing forwards, and they push out directly to the sides. So depending on which way our center is facing, the area between hips and waist, our arms will travel in different directions. So that middle part of your body, the same part of your body that you're really trying to get that feeling of sitting with, begins to lead the movement of our arms. It becomes an increasingly important focus of attention thereby. And that we learn to bring our attention back to that middle part of the body on a regular basis. And we can think of that middle part of the body as being that point of stillness within the movement. So we can learn to bring our attention back to stillness. Expanding, yang, contracting. One more round of this. Okay, let your hands drop down, circling palms. This time, expansion, pushing one arm out sideways, let it just swing up and over your head, and once again down. some straight down the center line. With expansion moving up the side of your body in a very similar way that it did with Dragon Plucks the Stars from the Sky. And then if it's comfortable, again turning, noticing how that draws your arm around. Once again though, especially to begin with, your arm will only come down the center line. Again, for those of you with more experience, what you may find is that after a while there's a natural expansion, kind of working diagonally through your back to your hand. That means that it just, without straining, it can come across a bit more. Change sides. Notice the difference between one side and another. And then, again, if it's comfortable, add in the turn. So again, my arm comes across not because I'm straining to pull my arm across, but because just in the process of doing this, there's more space there for the internal movement. It doesn't feel like I'm having to even almost decide. My arm just naturally moves until that space is filled. Same thing now with rowing a boat in the middle of the lake, pushing up, push your hips back. Notice how that brings your shoulders forwards. Very careful with your back, and then letting the hips drop back and pushing up again. So it's not a back bend, and it's not like, say, something like the plank that we find in arts like Pilates. It's an extension through your back. Think of how a cat, when it stretches, looks. That the way it gets longer and thinner, it's got that kind of quality about it. And then turn and push your hips back. Polishing the table. Once again, coming back to the upright, hands by your center, and then extending out again. And back. One more round of this. And then, once again, just stand. Okay. So as we go through that first set of exercises, from a point of view of awareness, we gradually get more and more focused. Our attention gets drawn back more and more to the center part of the body until finally, those last couple of movements almost entirely dependent on what's happening in the center. The phrase that comes to mind when I talk about this from the old writings in Tai Chi describes our mind, and when we talk about mind in this kind of context, in the context of a lot of East Asian meditative arts akin to Tai Chi, mind covers not just our thinking, it includes that, but also our feelings and emotion. Is sometimes that the phrase used is heart mind, and there's various original terms, but they all seem to point at the same direction. So mind has a very broad kind of palette. So the mind, our mind acts like the commander, talking about the commander of an army, the general directing the movements of the troops from where up on a hill or something like that. Bear in mind this is an old quotation, so no particular relevance to modern style warfare. And the center of your body is like the banner, and the orders would go out, the intention, if you like, would go out from the commander to order the banner to go to the left. And so the banner would move to the left, and at that point, the rest of the army would follow the banner. And then maybe some information would come back. No, we can't go this way any further. That will come back to the command center, and then that might change the intent, and so on and so forth. And that describes very nicely, I think, the way that these two aspects of the inner quality of Tai Chi work together. This is intentional movement, and so mind in one way or another, either consciously or unconsciously or subconsciously, is, if you like, giving instructions to the rest of the body, and the part of the body that receives those instructions and distributes them is going to be in the physical center of the body. So in more ways than one, we're moving in a very centered way. So again, feet parallel, maybe, if you like, for this next one, a little bit wider apart, and you will end up with your feet turned out a little bit more here. Let your weight drop, transfer your weight from one foot to another. I always find that the sideways transfer of my weight is more likely to be the one where my posture gets compromised. I often feel that I'm doing something like that. And I think it's partly because it's a very small movement. You're only going to 60% of your weight in each leg. So while slightly wider posture can be helpful, it's good conditioning for your legs, but it also means there's just more space there for that 60% to accumulate. Go across into your left leg, so mirror my movements, and turn your body a little bit in the direction that the foot below you is facing. Settle down in this left leg and feel the push back, and rather than letting the movement push you up, have it push you along. Guide the movement through your center and get a sense of just dropping through your right leg, your center turning. So this time when the leg begins to unbend, then that upward energy is directed across mostly. There's still a sense of upward energy as you'll see in a moment. Go across and then raise the opposite heel, and you'll find that more of your weight will settle in the left leg. You get a stronger feeling there. Replace the heel, let the leg push you across. So that movement of your weight and the sinking down is a good example of this interaction of mind and center. The intent is to move from side to side. And so when we feel the push, when we feel that energy, we move the center across. There's also an intent that's easily seen to sink here, to feel my weight sinking down until I feel that push. Now, hands at your sides. As you go across into your right foot, feel how your hands are moving, and then same thing across into your left. Now, just at this point, your right hand begins to push up and extend out from your shoulder a little bit. Elbows still loose, like a branch growing out of a tree. Come back, do the same thing with the left hand. You come across your hip, moves your shoulder moves your elbow. Come straight out from your shoulder. Here, there's an expansion, very similar again to dragon plucks the stars from the sky, and a contraction and an expansion between hip and shoulder through your ribs and so on. This time, turn your right hand palm down. So now you're coming back, and the hands are level in the center of the movement, and then your left hand pushes up. Both hands now rotate at the end of the movement. This is the exercise, hitting the ball in front of the shoulder. So you can see there's an overall intent, which is to hit the ball. A kind of an external intent, an image if you prefer, a function. There's an intent for your weight to move in response to the compression and expansion in your legs. There's an intent to sink down to get that initial compression. There's also the awareness that at the end of each weight transfer, not before, so that's here in that final few moments of the turn in your center, there's a rotation through your shoulders, and that turns your arm. And remembering that muscles like biceps and triceps, keep that sort of softer, more supple, more elastic tone to them. Just maybe trying to feel the movement through the bones of your arms. If it's true that this is a branch growing out of a tree, it's almost like the humerus and then bones of the lower arm and into your fingers all sort of grow out slightly. Just see if you can get a sense for how we get that feeling of complete movement through our arms. And bear in mind, this is very much something that we're looking for through the whole of the body. It's easier to get that sense with our arms, but very difficult to sustain. Because if you're just using your arms, then that will eventually cause your shoulders to tighten, and that will cause the muscles to tighten, and so on and so forth. If 90% of the effort involved in doing this is coming from starting in your feet and your legs, then again, more of your body is involved in the movement. And one of the things that makes that link is our awareness. We're aware of what's happening in our feet, in our knees, in our hips, how they're relating to each other, just essentially keeping an eye on them. And when we do that, the next thing that we become aware of is a continuity in the movement that's very flowing in itself, almost water-like. And so a clarity of mind, a precision of posture actually create the circumstances where that sense of the energy in our body flows very freely and smoothly. We don't have to aim at making the flow, we cultivate the flow. And in the way that you would cultivate a plant in your garden or in a pot, you wouldn't force the plant to grow. You just make sure that there aren't any weeds around it, that it's in the right place, you water it, feed it, and so on and so forth. And when we do that, the plant will grow itself. And we can then begin to just direct that growth a little bit. So that's the next stage in a way is, once we've got that flow, is to direct it. And here, for instance, you're hitting the ball, so the instruction is very clear. You're hitting the ball in front of the shoulder, not slightly above the shoulder, not to the left or the right of the shoulder, but directly in front of the shoulder. One more time on each side. Good. Check out. To change the stance, starting in the parallel stance, what we refer to sometimes as the Wu Chi stance. Turn one foot out to an angle that you may want to play about with. Step straight forwards with the other foot, toes pointing straight ahead, facing straight forwards, trying not to be at an angle. And once again, just transferring your weight. This time, when we go into the front foot, at the moment, you're getting something like 60% there of your weight there again. When we go back, because the foot's turned out, it's a little bit more, 70%. Same idea, sinking down, feeling the response from our legs. Trying to keep your pelvis level and noticing whether we have that very common tendency to want to particularly go forwards, to lean forwards a little bit. A good thing to do in everyday walking, but not useful for this particular practice. And that feeling of dropping through your hips. This time when you go into your back foot, you just raise your toes a little bit, front toes. You can turn the foot out a little to get more of the weight going in, because now you push your back knee forwards and that raises the back heel. So gradually more of your weight begins to settle down through the leg. And those of you, particularly those of you with a bit of experience at finding that point of equilibrium that we did at the start of the class, you have a sense of where that works best for you. Again, ideally, perhaps behind the ball of each foot. Then just recognize that that's your target. It's quite precise, it becomes very precise, this. And then when you've got most of your weight in your back leg, just bring the front foot in, push out, put your heel down, lower your toes, push forwards. And bring the back foot in. Now you're aligned over the front leg. Push the foot back and out. Keep the width of your step, ball of the foot, and the heel goes down. The term that we use is that we plant the foot. And if you're going to plant a bulb or something like that, you locate it well, you press it gently in to the ground. And planting a bulb is a very intentional process. Planting your step should be at least as intentional. So you need to have that foundation through the supporting leg to avoid sort of falling into the step. It's a shorter than normal step. And there's no need to take great strides here. And then bring your feet parallel. Straighten this out. Have your other foot forward. So starting in the parallel stance, step forwards, roughly square to begin with, at least, maybe a bit longer again for those of you with more experience. But to start off with, think of your feet on the diagonal corners of a square, the weight dropping down and transferring your weight. Notice whether, as you move your weight, there's any resistance to that in your legs, the knees, ankles. Knees are very commonly locked up. You want the sense of the movement to flow down through your knee, not into your knee. If your knee locks up, then your knee starts to carry a lot of the weight of your body, and you can damage your knee. The first place that you really feel the pressure of the weight should be should be the sole of your foot, I beg your pardon, and ideally that point just behind the ball of each foot. Beginning to raise your toes and your heel. If that image of the center line is a useful one to you, then let me just show you again here. Obviously this is not exact because it's not it's in front of my body, but you can see how it begins to move. And as I raise my toes and my heel a little bit further, here is when I'm in the 60% position, not quite going into my foot, but when I push my back knee forwards, see how the stick ends up here. It's a little bit off position. If it was more in the center, that would have been just behind the ball of my foot. So that might be an image that is useful to you with this exercise, bringing your foot in. And then step in, either forwards or backwards, take a few steps in one direction. And then going back the other way, we get used to the feel of that posture. So there's an intuitive element that too gets fed into our intent. Sometimes that will work for you, sometimes not. And then shake out. We do a lot by intent. We do all sorts of actions that we don't really think about until maybe something goes wrong. I could go and open the door. I wouldn't have to go and open the door. Boom, boom, boom. So, hold on, it's stuck. Then I'd have to think about it as something stuck in. And so that more technical side, which people can often resist in Tai Chi, I feel, but it's actually very important to try and understand some of the technical side of it, so that we can then begin to kind of like tweak things. Nothing is excluded. This is an art of mind and body, of heart and mind, of intuition and intellect, if you like. Have your right foot forwards. Fisherman cast a net. Again, notice, is something changing? Is there a point where you lose that sense of flow? For those of you with more experience, I don't want that. But even if you do use that more intuitive sense, Notice how your body responds to that. If your body is not responding to that, just check. Have I got the weight in the right place? Have I leant over? Have I moved the arms too much? A very common error is to lead with the arms. It's always the case that our body moves our arms forwards, not the other way around. You can see that very clearly, I think, with this particular exercise, so it's a good one to practice. Next time you come back turning, let your arms swing down and up. Nice little smooth curve, not too far from your body. Going forwards, letting your hands come across your hips and again curving up and back with a sideways figure of 8 then. Your hands guided by your center. Your center, one way or another, guided by your intent. Maybe just the image of the movement or the memory of the movement for many of you. And then shake out. Okay. Have your other foot forwards. First of all, a few rounds of fisherman cast the net. So you're moving through water. And then turning into the figure of 8. With expanding, contracting through the sides and your back. Again, there's one aspect that was very like the expansion the side of your body that we get in Dragon Plucks the Stars from the Sky. I've turned my front foot out, so I'm going to go forwards and where the space view is. Raise my back heel, bring my foot in, and step through. You don't have to lift your foot up a long way, but if you do raise your knee, make sure that you're not leaning over. So an awareness of your posture, your alignment with the pull of gravity helps to guide your intent. And then I'm going to change direction. And then okay. Rubbing your hands together. Tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder, your arm. On the other side. Once your back. Round your hips. Legs. Belly. And the upper part of the chest. The Tai Chi looks for movements and practices that bring together apparent opposites: stillness and movement, mind and body, intellect and intuition, expansion, contraction, and brings them into one unified whole. And you know, this is really at the heart of the art, whatever you're interested in it. So to finish, embrace tiger, return to mountain, back to the parallel stance, sinking down, pushing up, your arms coming out. At the top of the movement, they come around, as though you're going to hold the ball against your chest. Drawing in, turn your hands palm down and sink down. One more time. And just come back to the standing position. Close your eyes if it helps. If it helps, just focus on taking a couple of slow, gentle breaths. But really just standing in this position, aware of the feeling in your body. Your attention settled and quieted in your body. Shake out. Lovely. Thank you very much, everybody.